get to see you in person and hear you talking.
I think one of the wonderful things about Initial View is that it is a way to add personality to your application. Your application is flat, right? It is the pieces that have made up part of your journey through high school and just part of your journey. It's never all of who you are. But your interview gives us insight into how you think about the world and the passion that you have for the change that you want to make, right? Or the drive that you have to learn something new, or the fact that you don't know any of that yet. All of that comes through when you really get to have a conversation with someone.
My colleague Annie Sullivan and I really rely on Initial View a lot with the applications in which students have submitted a video. It's just such a great tool to make an application that's two-dimensional until we watch the video really come alive. And what we're looking for is, we're looking for a little bit of spontaneity. The Initial View interviewers ask some questions that you might expect, but they also ask questions that you probably wouldn't expect and that the students couldn't necessarily prepare for. And so we want to see how the students think on their feet. We want to see if they get flustered when something happens that they didn't expect, or whether they can adapt. And the students who are going to be most successful are the ones who don't get too rattled when something unexpected comes their way.
In terms of what we're looking to identify in the interview, we want to get a sense for what are you like? What are your quirks? What are your interests? What are the things that you care about and you're passionate about? And sometimes that doesn't come through in the application. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for you to just be yourself, but we really spend a lot of time looking to see whether or not you seem authentic, and whether you're showing us your real self. And those are very kind of real things for the admissions officer. We finally get to connect with a student who otherwise was just kind of a piece of paper.
One time within an interview, Initial View really helped us dive into a student that on paper had really common interests for our applicant pool, but through the interview, we really understood why she was so interested in psychology, why she got excited about how the brain worked and the connections, and how that also tied into her cultural heritage. And it really helped us see beyond just that she was a student who was applying to one of our most popular majors, but really what made her excited about that and what she would add to our community.
We are very much building a community when we are reviewing applications. And so we do absolutely have conversations about, is the student going to be a good roommate? What is the student going to be like in the classroom? Is this the type of student who's going to seek out professors because they're simply interested in what they're doing? Initial View enables us to really get to know the student in a wonderful and unique way. And frankly, it's a great way for students to make their application stand out.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're located. Welcome to Tuesday Talks. And I am super excited that even on summer vacation, we continue to have people logging in. And so thanks so much for joining us. And I have wonderful guests here today. And many of you have been asking on the chat and through other places that you want to know about summer and what to do about summer. So I asked these friends of mine today to come on and talk to us about that. So Bridget, Mari, and Sean, are you all there? Yay, welcome. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a minute here. But before we do that, we're going to do a few little nuts and bolts before we start. If you have not already opened your chat box, please open your chat box. And if you have not already opened your Q&A box, open that as well, because I am expecting you all to participate. So definitely get that ready, get your keyboards ready, and we can't wait to use that. Also, you might see in the chat already, and if you don't, I will put that in again. If you are having any trouble with Zoom for some reason, or you need some language support, we have both Chinese language support and Korean language support. So go find where you need to be. But otherwise, we love you hanging out here on Zoom as well. We may or may not be playing Spot Mr. View today. So in case you don't know what that is, in case this is your first time joining us, which I think for most of you, it's not the first time, but in case it is, we may or may not be playing Mr. View, which means make sure your video views are on gallery view so that you can always see any of the windows. And usually Mr. View will show up in my window, although sometimes he shows up on his own. So you need to look for him. And when you find him, you need to screenshot and send an email to contact@initialview.com, and we will send you prize. So we want you to pay attention. So pay attention. And once again, thank you so much to all of our sponsor schools. We could not be doing Tuesday Talks without you. The reason why people keep showing up is because of you. And so thank you for that. And if you do not see your high school on this list and you want to see your high school on this list, please tell them to email me. My email, I'm going to have it up at the end here because we want this to be accessible to everybody. And so we definitely want your high school to know every single week what we're talking about. So thank you for that. And without further ado, let's get started on this week's Tuesday Talk. So I'm going to start off and ask our guests to just briefly introduce themselves. They'll tell you who they are and also where they, a little bit about their institution. So Bridget, do you want to start us off?
I'd love to. Hello, everyone. My name is Bridget O'Connor. I am an admission counselor at Ithaca College. I work with our international applicants, so that would be you all. I'm so excited to meet you virtually. Ithaca College is a private, mid-sized liberal arts college. We are located in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. It's about 4 hours northwest of New York City, if you're more familiar with the city. We offer 90 programs across 5 different colleges, so there's lots to explore here. We were founded as a music conservatory, so our education style follows the idea of theory, practice, and performance, and I'd love to tell you more about it at a later time. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And Mari.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here with everyone. My name is Mari Prower. I am one of our Associate Deans of Admission and the Coordinator of International and Domestic Recruitment at Colgate University. Colgate is located in a very, very, very small town called Hamilton, New York, in the dead center of New York State. We are a rural and residential campus, and I think a pillar of Colgate as an institution is that students really have this living and learning community that they get to be a part of by being in more of a rural location. Our curriculum really boasts a lot of freedom and flexibility while still guiding you through selecting a major and going through that exploration and that discovery period of your life. About 30% of our students will double major, 50% have at least 2 majors, and we offer over 60 different programs. So we really try to keep the intentionality of our student body pretty small. So we have about 3,200 students, while still allowing for students to take this academic and sort of personal exploration throughout their 4 years. So nice to chat with everyone today.
Fantastic. And Sean.
Hello, everyone. Sean Felton here. I'm Executive Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Cornell University, also in Ithaca, New York. So you're getting a double dose of Ithaca today, and actually a triple dose of upstate New York, which is what we all are about for sure. Cornell is a large institution, medium to large size institution with 15,000 undergraduates who are studying 80 to 90 different majors at the undergraduate level across 7 to 8 colleges. We're actually opening a new college this fall, the School of Public Policy. And we have lots of alumni around the world, 250,000 plus. You might actually know one or have had some contact with a Cornellian because they are fairly easy to find. But it's great to be with you this today, and looking forward to the conversation.
Wonderful. And my name, I I always forget to introduce myself. My name is Gloria. I am one of the co-founders of Initial View, host of Tuesday Talks. So happy to be with you all. And I want to know who you all are. So I'm going to launch a poll right now. And if you can go ahead and tell us where you are in this process, because every week we have a different kind of group coming in. And so we love to know if you're a student, if you're a parent, if you are a counselor. And we like to know where you are, in the process. If you're a younger student, we might have some different advice. If you are about to apply, we might have some other insight to give you. So let's see, getting some good participation here. It looks like half of you are getting ready to apply, and that's exciting. Let's see, I'll just give it one more, like 10 more seconds here. Yeah, it looks like more than half of you are getting ready to apply to college very soon. And so that's why you're here, I'm sure. Well, fantastic. Well, as usual, I'm going to start off with a chat question because I'd like to know what your thoughts are before we start giving you our thoughts. And so get your chat box open. It always takes a little bit of time for people to warm up here, but the first chat question we have is, what are you planning to do this summer? And your answer can be, I have no idea, but I do want to see like what people are starting to think about planning. Maybe you're already in your summer. I think many of you might already be in summer, so you might be doing things. Okay, so we've got summer camps, some self-study and preparation for some exams and competitions. Great. What else are people doing? Internships, wonderful. Studying, summer program at a university, research. That's a popular one that we've heard about the last few weeks as well. Exam prep for IELTS, SAT, research program, charity events, volunteering. Great. A lot of similar things, some a little different. Planning to take the TOEFL, research, personal project. Great. Okay, wonderful. And then my next, trip to relatives. Yay, that's a little different. Oh, somebody's attending summer school at Cornell. Working on their essays. Okay, good. Now people are starting to get alive. Perfect. Okay, so now my second chat question is, what do you want to learn this summer? And this can be something academic. It can be something else. Like, what do you want to learn? What do you hope to learn? What is something that you'd like to learn this summer? Computer science, how to prepare for the application process, figuring out my major, cooking, more about colleges, engineering, development in badminton, right? Biology, preparation for, behavioral economics and macroeconomics, psychological theories, playing basketball and longboard, calligraphy, geophysics. Some people are really concerned about their exams. Neuroscience. Oh, how to have a pet. That's so fun. Finding my interest. Finishing experiments, plant care, architecture. This is great. I'm going to ask our guests here, what do you want to learn this summer? It's always great to hear from the other side too. Like, what is something that you're looking forward to this summer and that you want to learn this summer? Because we're lifelong learners.
I also want to learn how to better take care of my plants. And I'm also a lifelong learner and in graduate school. So I'm continuing my education with all of you guys.
Wonderful.
During the summer, I tend to do a lot of professional development, so it's not quite the same pace as the rest of the year. So it's a little bit of a stepping back, but it's still learning for me. And then the other thing that I think is, everything's learning, I believe, but the other thing that I think is learning and sort of a bit more relaxing is just taking time to stop and enjoy the air and to rest and to sleep more and to see the people, like really see the people around you and talk with them and engage more in your own life, just because you need to recharge. And so, that's something that I'm always learning and relearning how to do. And I'm also always learning and relearning things about the people that I care about and that I don't spend a lot of time with necessarily the rest of the year when I'm a bit more engaged in my professional endeavors.
This summer, I am excited to learn more about Ithaca and the nature of this beautiful area. I moved here during the winter months where it was very cold and I didn't want to go outside, but I love to hike. So I'm excited to spend some more of the free time I have this summer hiking, exploring the gorges and the waterfalls that are in this area. I'm really excited.
Yeah. My son plays baseball, and I was never a baseball mom when we lived in China. And then when we moved to America, I suddenly had to become a baseball mom. So one of the things that I want to learn this summer is actually understanding some of the stats. Like I just see these numbers and I don't always get it. And so one of my goals this summer is to actually learn what those mean so I can be a better baseball mom. Well, I'm going to cut to the chase here because I know a lot of people right off the bat. And this question has been coming up at Tuesday Talks for really months, and we just haven't addressed it. So I'm going to cut to the chase and ask this first question, which is, are those summer programs at some of your institutions and other well-known institutions, are those summer programs valuable? And we can really unpack that a little bit more, but just that is kind of the question. Should we do them? Are they worth it? Are they valuable? Let's start with that. And we don't have to stay on that forever, but I want to get that out because that's definitely top of mind for many families. So any insight at all? And we can just start the discussion.
Do you want me to go first, since they've already mentioned the Cornell Summer School? And
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Why don't you go?
So here's the deal with the summer programs. Obviously, there is value. The value, I think, is, and this is how we think about it at the university, the value is that high school students get a chance to experience life in Ithaca that you just heard Bridget talk about, which is amazing. They get to experience a summer in Ithaca, which most of our students don't actually even know what summer's like here because they've gone back home. And we love that for those of us that live in Ithaca year round, because we have more of the amenities available just for us. But you get to experience the campus, the weather, the really, really lovely weather, right? The environment, the food. You get to experience what it's like to be in a university classroom with a university faculty member teaching and learning at presumptively a different level than what you've experienced already. But that's not necessarily true, depending upon the subject matter. We know some students from around the world from, various secondary experiences are, perhaps even far and beyond what we might be expecting here in the US in terms of what they know and what they can do. But you do have that classroom moment where you get to sort of say, you know what, university in the US, this is what it's like. I can do this. The other thing too is with summer programs, oftentimes, especially with programs that are targeted, students are often getting more in-depth knowledge and experience through the faculty member with the course and subject matter that they're taking and working through. And that actually, all of this is that I'm describing now is truly helpful for that individual. And what it's doing is it's making them perhaps better prepared because they'll know more about what they're hoping to experience after graduation, after finishing secondary school and, getting ready. They're getting ready for university study. So, I do think that, programs, and it doesn't have to be a summer program at a university. I mean, we just talked about all the things that we're doing to sort of continue learning and relearning and, sort of advancing ourselves. All of this is really helpful at the individual level. And I definitely want to just make sure that that's clear, that means that for you, it's a personal choice if you do a program. And yeah, there's going to be some value. Hopefully you're choosing something that's going to add value to you and what you have experienced, what you know, and perhaps that will prepare you for what is to come or what is next. I'll stop there and let my colleagues talk a little bit more about the sort of the non-individualistic value or lack of value or assumptions that really need to be considered with programs like this.
I think I resonate with so much of what Sean just said, and I also really appreciate that Nathan put in the chat. Love to hear us talking about our summer plans, making you feel relaxed a little bit, because that's what we want you to feel, is like you're go, go, go all year. And we want your summers to be doing something that's of interest to you. If a summer program isn't of interest to you, it's not going to be a fun experience, and you're going to look back on that experience and say, I don't know if that was worth that, or I don't know if maybe I could have found something during that time that is better for me personally. And I think it's really about looking into who you are and figuring out what's important to you. And so when you're learning how to water your plants, or you're learning how to take on responsibility for taking care of pets, that's all really valuable. And those are really transferable skills in attending university afterwards, because that's sort of finding your independence a little bit more. And so whatever you're doing to find that independence, or to sort of discover a little bit more about your interests, is really of value. So sometimes those summer programs can do that, but a lot of times you can also do something else, whether that be an internship, whether that be volunteering, whether that be learning to ride a longboard, or learning how to take care of a fish. Those are all things that are developing your life skills. And so it doesn't always have to be this sort of concrete in this box, what you need to be doing. And I kind of want you guys to get away from thinking about that, because there isn't one answer. There isn't one perfect thing that works for everybody. That would be pretty boring on college campuses, to have everybody think the same way, to have everybody interested in the same things. And so we really want you to kind of think about what that means for you. We also understand that some summer programs can cost a lot of money. And that's a great barrier to a lot of students. And so when we're looking at what you're doing over the summer, we're not focused on that, because we want this to be an equitable application process for you. And so if that is posing a cost barrier for you, there's so many other things that you can do that are free, like taking care of plants or learning how to bake.
Bridget, did you have something to add?
I really think my colleagues covered a lot of what I wanted to say. If you could see me just nodding along most of the time. I think what we're really trying to get across is that a summer program is great if it's something that you're interested in, but like lots of things in life, you will get out of it what you put into it. So if it's a subject matter that you're interested in, if you're very curious about what life is like on college campuses in the US, then a summer program could be a great experience for you. But keep in mind, it's not a free ticket of admission into the college or university. So really think about it as something, as my colleague said, that will bring value to you and your interests and your development, but not as a free ticket into the college.
And people come to Tuesday Talks because they are concerned about getting into college. that's the reality of why people are attending these talks week after week. And so every week we have questions about, how much does this weigh? Will it hurt me or help me? Will this hurt me and help me in the actual application process versus, in life? And we are always challenging that and how that they should be hand in hand. But given that, let's talk about, does it hurt or help? Mari, you mentioned like there's a cost to this, and so you want equal access to people. Like if it's not available to them, or too expensive for them, that it won't hurt them in the application process. But let's unpack that a little bit, because we talk about holistic review all the time. We talk about how it's not one thing, that necessarily helps or hurts, but obviously there's some level of helping and hurting. So I do kind of want to talk about that. So at what point does it quote unquote help? Like, what would be helpful to you in your review if someone went to a summer program, for example? If someone went to a summer program, when at that, just going to the summer program is not the ticket in. And not going to summer program, it doesn't make you get in or not get in. But how they learn something, tell you something could potentially help. So what would be helpful to you in your review in understanding the student better if they were to do a summer program?
I mean, I think first of all, like, we look really contextually at students. So we're trying to understand a lot more about them in their context, and never assessing two students right next to each other, because we know that their interests, their background, what they have access to is really different. And so we can never look at two applications and say, this one did a summer program, this one didn't, well, this one's out. That's just not how it works. It's more about what you get out of that experience and how you reflect on that, and how that reflection sort of comes through. Yes, we look at your activities that are outlined in your common application or your coalition application, but it's sort of about that moment of reflection and how you interpret that and how you sort of express what you've gotten out of that, because you can get equally as much out of not doing a summer program as you can doing one, or vice versa. And so I think that it's about the reflection component of it. It's about, again, what's available to you, but also what is of interest to you. So it's definitely not a ticket in. It's definitely not if we see it, it's not like you're automatically in or you're automatically out. There is no one solution to getting into college, because we all have our own sort of ways of assessing students and placing them in our campus communities. But we really want to see that reflection, and we want to see what you've gotten out of those experiences, no matter what it is over the summer.
And to add to that, especially related to what could you get out of this particular kind of experience, on a campus, at a university, or as a part of a program, even virtually, what could you get out of it? What's the positive or upside of it? A couple things come to mind, and it's related to the holistic and contextual review process. But obviously, many programs will provide a transcript. And so again, back to that, like, this student gets to experience the classroom virtually or in person. They get a grade for coursework. They get to learn material, perhaps that they didn't know before. They get a grade from a faculty member. We see it. You can present that transcript. You should present that transcript as a part of your admission application material. So that's a benefit. You've got a mark. It's a good mark, hopefully. You've also had experience in the classroom with a faculty member. And, depending upon how well you did in the class, that could turn into the individual students deciding to ask that faculty member at whatever program, at whatever school it was, for a recommendation. So a recommendation letter from a university faculty member is also something that could come out of this experience if you're able to have it. And then, of course, I'll just speak really specifically here to architecture, because it's come up a couple times in the chat, but it's not the only area where portfolios and preparation for portfolio happens as far as summer programs are concerned. But oftentimes, students will learn more, perhaps, than they could have or would have in their secondary schools about, the portfolio preparation, the different things that faculty members in fine art or architecture, what they're looking for, how they're looking at submissions. They might learn a bit more about that as a part of a summer program. And of course, that information is going to help an interested architecture or fine art student prepare a better portfolio. They're going to have more information. Now, here's the thing about that. A lot of schools actually, if they require a portfolio, by the way, or need one or want one, they actually put a lot of that information on the web. So you don't have to do a program to get like some really good examples. Go to the Cornell architecture website. We have portfolios, student samples of submitted prior years. So you don't have to come to Ithaca to prepare. But it is something that you as an individual would gain if you make the choice and you want to, you want to sort of make that connection, you can make that connection, you can spend that time. And then finally, demonstrated interest. And you have to ask each institution if they really care about or focus or track demonstrated interest. But, a summer program opportunity, again, if you can afford it, if you have the time to do it, if immigration and travel barriers and disruptions aren't keeping you from doing it, or it's happening virtually, some schools may look at that as demonstration of interest. And so that's another positive that can come from that particular activity. You can also demonstrate interest in 100 other different ways, like submitting an initial view assessment, for example. It's one of the ways that you can also demonstrate interest. So those are just some things to keep in mind as positives. Again, all of those are for the individual. And as Bridget and Mari both said earlier, these positives don't fast track you through the admissions review and selection process, but they do enable your candidacy and your ability to complete the application and to feel more confident in your applying to the schools that students will be applying to.
Thank you for that. That's a lot of color. Bridget, sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No problem. I just wanted to give a little insight, at least for us. We don't have a checklist of a certain number of summer programs or activities that you were involved in or anything like that. There's no like, you need to have 3 activities or have attended 2 summer programs. We don't have any checklists like that we go off of when looking at applications. So going back to what Mari mentioned, like what you get out of your experiences and how you can reflect on them is really what's going to give us some more insight into who you are as a person. We care, of course, how you are as a student in your classes. And as Sean mentioned, if you do a summer program, like showing your grades for the end, that's amazing. But we also want to know what you're going to bring to our campus that's outside of the classroom. So how have your either academic experiences or your personal experiences helped you grow as a person? How have they changed your interests and things of that matter? So just wanted to give a little more insight into the application process and details about how this would add up for you.
Yeah, great. Well, let's reassure some of those people that thought they could go to a summer program and then suddenly couldn't because of COVID. There's a lot of people like that on this call who even applied, got in, super excited, and just can't come. So, so we talked about some of the valuable things that you can gain from doing that. Where else can they gain these valuable things? We are in a virtual world, so we are doing a lot of things virtually. I guess, let's start with academics, because you did highlight some of that, Sean, when you were talking about some of the value you can get. You can get from learning in a different kind of environment, a different classroom. You can get grades from that. You can get letters of recommendation. A lot of people, instead of summer programs, are now moving into the direction of research. Research with a professor, research with a mentor, research with a graduate student, paying for research. Let's talk about that. What is the value of that? What should you be trying to get out of that? How do you make the most of that? Is it necessary? I think a lot of people on this call might be worried about, given the last couple of years and with test optional and with a lot of questions about transcripts and grade inflation and all those things, people want to prove to you that their academic chops are there. And so, I want to balance that conversation. We know that academic rigor and ability is very, very important to be successful at your institutions, but we also don't want to just do lots of things for the sake of having more numbers and metrics. So what are your thoughts on how to approach research, but also maybe some other activities that could allow for all of those values that you mentioned, Sean, earlier about going, a summer program? Anyone want to start? I know it's a big topic, and each institution, like every Tuesday talk we talk about, each institution is going to look at it a little bit differently. So, but I'm giving you grace here, where the answer can just be it depends. But this is personal insights, not necessarily institutional insights as well. So,
I just want to reassure everyone, as you can see from talking to us today, that we are humans as well, and we've also been living through the last few years, so we understand things have changed. You've been asked to change the way that you learn in your classes, going from remote to in person and sometimes back and forth. Like, we do understand that. We've been through this journey with you as well. So please keep that in mind. Like, we're not robots reading your application, like, where are the numbers and where are the classes? We do understand that. So I'm still thinking about other ideas and insights to give you, but I did want to start with that sentiment for sure.
yeah.
Are a lot of benefits to doing research. There are a lot of benefits to doing like a formal research program, but that's just not fully accessible by all again. Again, I want to go back to the point of like, we're looking at you contextually, and we're never going to expect you to do something that's out of your financial comfort zone, that's out of your safety comfort zone. Like, that's first and foremost important to us, but there are a lot of ways that you can engage in like independent research, right? Like, I hear a lot of students who are like, I'm really interested in researching about how Alzheimer's impacts people that have early onset Alzheimer's because of my family situation. And I have a family member who does that. And so they go and do research on their own and end up sort of finding different elements that they didn't know about and producing some sort of like write-up about it. And that's not necessarily like a formal guided research opportunity, but it shows that you've, again, had this sort of independence and this sort of like thirst for knowledge a little bit. We like, going way back to the start, like, we want to produce lifelong learners. And I think a lot of what the curriculum in the United States, especially liberal arts curriculum, boasts is sort of developing those skills to become lifelong learners. And that starts sort of when you're finishing up high school. And so there's a lot of ways to show your academic prowess without the actual hard numbers of it, right? There's a lot of quantitative information you can provide for us that ends up being a little bit more introspective in a sense. So I see a lot of students who will submit applications and they're saying, well, I wrote this paper for one of my classes, but I don't feel like I dove deep enough. And so during the summer, I kind of took it upon myself to do it more. And I actually reached out to my teacher, and my teacher said, yeah, I'll help you a little bit. So like, it can be as easy as that sometimes, but don't feel like the end all be all is you doing research with a graduate student or a professor or somebody else. Research isn't for everybody. As I mentioned, I'm in graduate school right now, and I took a research class, like a research methods class, and I realized that research is not what I want to do at all. And that's okay, because there's so many other ways that you can be learning. That can be reading books. That can be like playing the Google Maps game that everybody's playing right now. Like, there are a lot of ways for you to discover your academic interests without doing what we would call research. If you're able to do research and that's of interest to you and you want to include that on there, again, we're looking for what you've gotten out of that. Like, it's not all about doing the experience and putting it on the paper. We want to see how that translates into skills for your sort of foreseeable future.
I would only add to what both Bridget and Mari said, that most of our students at Cornell that are applying have not had a research moment prior to coming to prior to showing up in our applicant pool. And so this notion that this is something that must appear, especially, engineering is big at Cornell, I know, but other STEM areas as well. But the idea that, without this one thing, very specific thing, you will somehow be disadvantaged or look different. The reality is most students have not had access to a research opportunity during their secondary school experience. But if you could, like Mari was just saying, it's one of many opportunities, that you could choose. The reality is whether or not it's a good decision for you, it depends really It may depend on what your focus is. If you're not interested in STEM areas, or social sciences, as Mario was just saying, research may be really hard to come by. I've met students when I've been traveling around the world who want to study theater, who want to study drama and comparative literature and government sometimes. And, those kinds of opportunities don't necessarily align neatly with research or laboratory opportunities that may be a bit more obvious, to you wherever you might be and easy to find. And so, I'm a big proponent of the reading thing. I think reading is going to always be a great thing to do, because that's probably the single most challenging difference between secondary and university study is the amount of reading and engaging of text that you do individually on your own outside the classroom without much tutelage or engagement from faculty. The expectation is just greater. So big time on reading, I think.
Yeah, that's great. And I do want to reassure the person that's putting in the chat, like, I'm really worried that research is necessary. It is not necessary. I think that's what all three of us are saying right now. It is not necessary to have. And we've talked about it on previous Tuesday Talks when we talked about extracurricular activities. Do not do research if it's not something that you love, that you're interested in, that you actually want to study, that you want to do in the future, because your motivation and your why won't be there. And that at the end of the day is probably more important, because lots of people do things but don't gain and learn and want to do them. So just reassuring you, student, you don't need to worry. But let's talk about, because test prep came up a lot on like what you're going to do for the summer. And so again, we're talking about motivations behind why we're doing the things we do in the summer. And unfortunately for many in this spot right now, kind of a big goal and a big priority is college application. And with that comes, I need to get ready for that. So any suggestions and advice about how to approach that test prep and whether or not you should spend that much time on it, and what you would prefer to see? I mean, test prep isn't something that you can necessarily, you're not going to put that on your college application as an extracurricular activity. So would like to any insights on how to think about test prep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll just go really quickly first, or try to go really quickly. So we've done a little bit of Cornell's test optional. And so I'll speak specifically from that particular lens. We're test optional, and we've done some study around who's submitting test scores and who isn't. So I'm talking about the SAT at this point. And, I know that the concern is that, well, Sean, Cornell probably has lots of international applicants. And so won't I be disadvantaged if I don't submit a test score as an international citizen applying to your school that has like over 70,000 applications at this point? And the reality is we've actually done some research, and the number of test score submitters during the test optional sort of phase of enrollment, admissions and enrollment practice at Cornell, which continues for 2 more cycles. So through fall 2024 applicants, we've actually noticed a significant decline in those submitting the SAT. And it's because of the pandemic. The pandemic is still ongoing, and we're going to continue to be test optional. So decrease in the number of those submitting scores. However, it is interesting to note that international applicants are still submitting scores at a sort of higher clip, if you will, than others. But even more specifically, test score submission at this point, even in the test optional environment at Cornell, seems to be really focused, and this is true beyond Cornell, seems to be focused on students who have STEM-related academic interest or major interest. And so I just want to make sure that everyone's sort of thinking about this the way perhaps that we are, which is that, Sometimes the score, if you have the option of sending it and you have a good score to send, sometimes the score can be more helpful. And sometimes the score can be less helpful. If you want to study French, the score might be less helpful. If you want to study engineering or physics, a strong score on the SAT may be more helpful to submit, and you have that option in the test optional realm that lives at many universities, not MIT, but many universities at this point and in the future. So in terms of preparation for, and that was your real question, I don't really have any comments about preparation other than maybe you need to think about prepping for the exam related to what your interest area is, because again, submitting a test score, if you want to study French, or if that's what you tell us, or if you want to study music, that's what you tell us, that test score is not necessarily going to help to advance your candidacy, again, pending what you tell us at Cornell you want to study. And you've got to think about the kind of school that you're applying to. A liberal arts college is going to read an application very differently than an engineering specific program or an institute, as we call them in the US. So.
I was going to give a little more practical advice for, as you were saying, like how to study, because of course this is summer. You do want to enjoy and not spend the same amount of time in school studying for your exam. So we were talking earlier about summer programs and how they give students, high school students specifically, the opportunity to try on the higher education and that kind of schedule for size. So maybe come up with your own course schedule for when you study for these exams. Give yourself an hour and a half a few times a week that you will sit down and study in your specific study place to prepare for those exams, but don't make it your entire summer vacation. That would be one piece of advice, just a thought. But going off of what Sean said, Ithaca College specifically, we've been test optional for over 10 years. So I almost like to reassure applicants that though we call it test optional, we're almost test blind. There's never the thought of, oh, this student did not submit their SAT scores. They might have had a bad score. We don't think that at all. We take a holistic approach to application review. So if students submit their SAT scores, they're weighed equally with all the other pieces of their application. But if they don't submit their scores, we just forget that they ever existed.
I think the only thing I would add to that is just like relax a little bit. I am like an absolute overthinker, and I think that developed when I was in high school, which was like eons ago, but I was so worried about prepping for a test that showed what I could produce on a Saturday morning that I overthought everything, and I was so overworked about it that I ended up producing bad test scores because all I actually was thinking about was how I was going to execute this exam, not the content of it. And I think when we take a step back and we just like relax a little bit and we realize how much of this we actually know, it creates a better testing environment. But again, there's such a de-emphasis on the standardized testing components of it now that we've sort of seen a few cycles of test optional, and we've seen what students are doing in lieu of studying for their exams. And sometimes that can produce something that's much more meaningful on our campuses. So just like, I know it's so much easier said than done, but just try to take a step back and relax and figure out the things that are really important. And sometimes when, the majority of institutions in the United States are test optional, that's not what's going to be the sort of end all be all to your application.
Yeah.
I would love to amplify that too. You have got to be more than a test score.
Yeah.
If you think that that test score is your entire identity, Mari and Bridget are both saying this. Oh, that's right. That's your motto. My gosh. So this isn't brand new information, because Gloria and Terry and their team, basically thought this up long before I just said it, but you have got to be more than a test score. Our processes are too dynamic, and we're looking for people. We're not looking for numbers and scores. We're looking for people. And so you've got to present as a person to see real success in this process, regardless of the school that you're applying to.
Well, we could talk till we're blue in the face about test scores and academics and grades and all of that, because we should just have another session about academic rigor and all the curriculums, and let's have a different session about that. But people want to know about summer. And so let's see, I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to ask you about pitfalls. But there are some people that mentioned wanting to learn, when we said, what do you want to learn? And mentions kind of majors almost, engineering, biology, things like that. So if people know that they have this specific major in mind, do they, I think people are concerned, like, I need to show that I'm actually interested in this major. So should their summer activities be related to their major of interest? Like, do they, or do they need to do something different to like show their balance and their, this is a question of like, is it better to be well-rounded or well spiked? So thoughts on how to choose activities based on your major.
So the last institution I worked at, we had something called a major map, and it was a circle, and it had all the majors that our institution offered. And from each of those majors represented, like each line represented a student and the number of times that they changed their major. So one of the things that US education boasts, for the most part, and now this isn't across the board, is sort of this educational development and exploring. And so you are not going to be the most well-rounded that you can be if you're focusing everything on one area. Because if you think you want to do engineering right now, and you do engineering research during high school, and you're part of the robotics club, and you're part of STEM clubs, and you're doing all of this stuff, and then you get to college and you're like, wait a minute, I had no idea organic chemistry was part of this, and I had no idea I had to take multivariable calculus 1 and 2. I can't do that. And then you pivot, and that's okay. But then you've dedicated a lot of your time to only these things that you thought were of academic interest to you. So I always, and again, I come from a liberal arts background and have always worked at liberal arts institutions. So I speak very specifically about the liberal arts and sciences curriculum, but there's a lot more than just your academic major. And yes, we can sort of find themes from your application when you're participating in activities that are of interest to you that relate to your major. But when you're looking at a student as a whole, we want this like holistic sort of person, and we want to see that you've developed in a lot of different ways. And that doesn't always mean that you should be doing something related to your academic major. It means that you should be doing things that are of interest to you, regardless of the academic tie.
Yeah, I was going to point out 2 main points, and one is really what Mari just touched on. You need to do things for you and not what you think we want to see. So if you're specifically looking either for summer programs or for activities or anything like that, that you think will look good on your application, that's not the right way to be doing it. You want to choose things that you are truly interested in. And 2, so much of exploring is to find what you do want to do, but also what you don't want to do. So if we see that you've joined, I don't know, the gardening club for 1 semester in high school, and then see that you didn't do it anymore, and you can reflect on, gardening wasn't my thing, I do not have a green thumb. That is great. You know that that's not for you, and you can try something else. So yeah, that would be my advice on how to choose other activities.
And just to kind of put a coda on that, I think that actually one of the pitfalls, Gloria, is actually this idea of, or just being hyper-focused on this idea of well-roundedness, and that's what we're all looking for. The reality is none of us is as well-rounded as we need to be, and that's the whole purpose of going to a university or a college, so that you can, increase what you know and expand, your touch points and your lenses for viewing and engaging the world around you, and to get a job perhaps too. Yeah, that too. But I think, one of the pitfalls honestly is this hyper focus on, I've got to do all these other things to show them that I can do all these other things. I have a very real world example from this last cycle where that backfired on about 45 people who all kind of knew each other, and there was some connective tissue between them. I won't go into specifics, but I do think that is a trap. When in fact you should be focusing on standing up and highlighting what it is you are good at, what it is you are best at, what it is you want to do, especially if that is your major, which in many cases it often is the major, the area of interest. You know, at Cornell, you actually apply to a major, a college. And so the conversation really needs to be very directed about what it is you want to do, because generally speaking, those are where an individual's assets and experiences and good, strongest grades and, you know, preparation are going to sort of have them, you know, I say stand up instead of standing out, because I think that's also a pitfall. You know, I've got to look different than everybody else, when in fact we are more the same, instead of all of us being so uniquely different. But, you know, I think that you've got to really you got to focus on where your strengths are and really kind of hone those and present them and, you know, package them in a way that does allow you to sort of exist in our minds a little bit longer when we're viewing apps.
Yeah, and I'll mention something I mentioned last week as well. You know, at the end of the day, this is still a human process. This is still a human process, and like all the people that are reading your application are human and are looking for humans. And so, you know, one of the memorable interviews that somebody shared with me one time, when she told me that it was the baking part of the interview that really impacted her, I remember thinking, like, why baking? Like, that seems so arbitrary. And, you know, the admissions officer told me, like, well, baking because you guys better be getting your screenshots because I can't even talk. Baking, why was baking important in that moment? It was the whole picture of that student. You know, that student had all this other stuff on the application already, but when she talked about baking in the interview, it made her a human. It made her a whole person, and it made her. And so, yeah, baking wasn't part of the major that she was applying to, but it illuminated something about her and who she might be on campus that helped the admission officer say, yes, like this is the type of student that I can see in this particular class this year. So just wanted to like reemphasize that, because I think it's important to not get caught up in these formulas that seem to kind of keep coming up in these questions. So, well, Sean mentioned a few pitfalls. Can you all tell me a little bit more about like kind of common mistakes you're seeing in how people are telling you about their summers and like what you would prefer? And while you're sharing that, I'm going to go ahead and share a screen of some words of advice that I asked you all to give me ahead of time.
I would say the biggest pitfall, and we've alluded to this a little already during our discussion, is to give a laundry list of all the things that they've accomplished and not at all reflecting on them or what they've learned or how they influence their life in any way. So going back to doing things because you think we want to see them versus doing things to truly enrich yourself. I'd say that's probably the biggest pitfall.
We're seeing more and more recently is an application not being written by the student. It's very obvious. Many of us have been doing this for a very long time, and we can pick up on a lot of those things. But this is your process. This is your college search process. It's your college experience, university experience, and your application needs to be done by you. And it needs to come from who you are, not who you think we want you to be, but who you really are. And we're finding, I think over the last couple of years, we've found that a lot of students aren't exactly sure what that means to them anymore. And that can be just as that can be just as formative as you knowing exactly what you want to be doing. And I feel like over the last 2 years, especially, I've read a lot of essays of students being like, I feel like I've lost who I am because I've been cooped up for 2 years, or I've been cooped up not doing things. And that's okay. Like, tell us about that, but it needs to come from you. It needs to come from your words, not anybody else, not what you think we want to hear. Really just like stay true to who you are, because we want to build campuses of students we know that can interact with each other and engage with each other and be their true selves.
I would only add, in terms of advice, that the writing that students do in admissions and for admissions is really, really important. And it doesn't mean that there is one solution or one way to present oneself vis-a-vis the writing that's done for the admissions application or for various different applications, but just the effort, the energy, and the individual time that's put into that space is really, it's really important. I think the pandemic has really kind of just, multiplied the importance and shown a light on how that effort, that part of the application really can make a difference. And so I would just encourage anyone that's planning to apply anywhere to really spend the time writing, talking to the admissions committee, and really trying to deliver this human that we've been talking about, this person who is more than just a major, more than just what they want to study, more than just a job, more than just a research activity, but try and deliver that person a bit more through the communication that happens through the writing that's done as a part of the admissions application.
Well, this has been a delightful conversation, and you all are wonderful for spending time with us and humoring us in some of these questions. I know some of the audience have come because they are very interested in your specific institution. So friends, if you are interested in these specific institutions, please do reach out to them individually. They do wonderful sessions about their institution specifically. And so they're happy to connect with you. And like one of the words of advice was connecting with current students. And I think that is the best advice, because we are not young anymore, friends. We can give you lots of thoughts and insights, and well, Bridget's probably young, but we can give you lots of thoughts and insights from the adult perspective, but you really want to know what school is like from people who just got in, and who are experiencing it now. So please do that. We are hopefully going to have a Tuesday talk later on in the summer with some current students, so you can hear from them as well. So in the meantime, it is past the hour. Thank you so much for spending time here. Mari, Bridget, Sean, thank you so much for spending time with us. For those of you who would like to stay on, I do have a colleague who's going to be on here answering questions about Initial View. So much of what we talk about here at Initial View through your interview, but also through your essay and all the writing, like Sean was saying, is this reflection piece. And I think that's a lot of times missing in the application process. We're too busy trying to check those boxes and make sure we have all those things. Would love to talk to you more about reflection. So if you want to stay on for that, please feel free. We're taking a break for 2 weeks for Tuesday Talks. We're going to have some summertime. So don't spend time on the webinar next Tuesday. Go do something you love. Go do something fun. I want to hear about your pets and your plants and your baking when we come back in 2 weeks. So thank you, everybody. Mari, Bridget, Sean, have a great day, great week. And everybody else, thank you so much. Have a good night. And we're hanging on for those of you who have questions about Initiative. Take care. Bye. Hi, Oakland.
Hi, morning.
For anybody who has questions, Yoquin's going to give you a brief introduction of what Initial View actually is. If you're new to Tuesday Talks and have no idea what an initial view is, she'd be happy to tell you a little bit about our interviews. But most of you probably know what initial view is already. So if you have specific questions about the process or about how to prepare, Yoquin's here to answer your questions. So thank you, Yoquin.
Yeah, of course. Hello, everybody. Yes, if you're staying here for a little bit, sticking around, we're going to spend the next 20 or so minutes. I'm going to give a very brief overview of initial view, what it does, what it is. If you have any questions, I'll be able to answer those as well. My name is Yoquin. I'm a current initial view interviewer, and I'm also a recent admissions officer at Swarthmore College. So I'm also familiar with interview from the admissions perspective. So feel free to, if you have questions already about the interview, feel free to pop them in the chat or in the Q&A box. But I will be just doing a very quick overview of what initial view is and what interview is all about. So you might know this already. If not, here it is. Initial view is, there's two sections of it, right? If you sign up for initial view interview, there's a 15-minute conversation that's unscripted. It's recorded as a video, and it also includes a 20-minute limited time typed response to an open-ended question. And both sections, are sent to the schools that you're applying to. Once you do your interview and you're happy with it, this is what eventually shows up on the admissions end. And obviously we talked about holistic review just now. We always talk about it, but the interview is one of the many pieces that makes your application whole, right? And we, as admissions officers, look at every single section, and interview is an important part of it. Especially, and we talked about this again today in the Tuesday talk, now that a lot of schools are test optional and test scores are no longer part of this big picture for a lot of schools. Interview also takes on a more important role, right? Instead of the test score section, which you saw just now it's a lot of other factors, right, that make up, the consideration that admissions officers put in for your application. And interview again takes up space in that, because like we all just talked about, it is about who you are as a person and not the scores, not the numbers that you put in your application. So again, remember that as you go into this process. And what do schools look for in an interview, right? We took a quick search at some of the universities, colleges, and what they put on their website in terms of the application interview section. And here's what they said, right? They want to see the student's personality. They want to hear their voice that's unfiltered. They want to get a deeper sense of, why they're interested in the academic things that they do. And they want to know how they fit with the school, right? And obviously they all want to make sure that you're proficient in the language that will be the instruction language of the college. So here are the things that colleges want to get, admissions offices want to get from the interview in particular. And why do the interview? all the reasons that we talked about so far. It makes you a person, right? For me, as a former admissions officer, it was so valuable to see a student and to actually hear their voice, because I didn't get to see that from a lot of the other sections of the application, for example, like the activities list or their academic record, right? It was not like having a conversation with the student, which I could really get the sense of when I'm watching an interview video. And we also want to know what the student is like in a classroom, right? A lot of the colleges are, seminar style discussion based. We want to see how the student interacts with others, interacts with the professor, how they voice their opinions, how they, reason their arguments, right? And all of that we could get a sense of from an interview. And obviously, it's not a number, it's not a score. Like what Sean was just saying in the Tuesday talk just now, you got to be a person, right? You've got to be more than a score, more than your grades on a transcript, because all of those we could easily get from your application, but that does not make you a person. And colleges want to admit real people. And I'll just say that for admissions officers, it was a fresh breath to see the video format as part of our application review process, which you can see actually right here. This is what admissions officers usually have in front of them when they're reviewing the application. You have this CRM called Slate, and on the left side, you have all these different sections of an application. You have like the Common App, you have the transcript, the school report, the recommendation letters, and then usually initial view is the last tab on the column. And then once you click in there, you see the video. You can click on it for it to play, and you also see this list of questions that were asked in student. So it was very easily accessible and visible to the admissions officer. And for me, it was a fresh breath of air because instead of reading all these write-ups and reading all these numbers, I could look at the student, I could hear them talk, and then I'll just say psychologically it makes a difference, right? It gives me a little break. And I always go in and click on the video first for it to play, and then read through the rest of the application because I could feel like I could hear the student talking to me. And a lot of times it's helpful to hear them articulate certain things in their own voice, in their own language. And it answers some of the questions that I have as I'm reading the application. So just give you a sense of what that looks like from the admissions perspective. And yeah, so when's the best time to do an interview? As soon as you have your college list, as soon as you're ready. If you are going to be a 12th grade student starting this fall and starting to apply to colleges, you can start doing it this summer, which is a good time to prepare for an interview. I know we talked about your summer plans, an interview could be part of that, but also just to get that over with, right? And if you are scheduling an interview now, you could get this 10% off. You can use this coupon that I have on here, so feel free to scan that if you have time. And if you're happy with the video, you get to keep it and you get to use it later on when you apply to colleges. And if not, you have a whole fall and winter to also do another interview to see if you do better or if you're happier with a second try or a third try even. So you can start booking now on the Initial View website. And here is the contact information, which you should have if you're at a Tuesday talk. You probably know Initial View well or know how to contact them. But here are the phone numbers. Here's the email that you can use to get in touch with the team if you have any questions. So I'm going to end this here and see if folks have any questions. All right, let's see. Okay, so there's one question. So someone did a junior interview earlier this month. When can I get feedback? So yeah, sorry, it's taking a while, but we are relatively short-staffed during the summer with, admissions officers giving feedback. So you should get that very soon. And, just it should be coming in. It should be coming very soon. And sorry again about that wait. All right. Alrighty, so hopefully folks were able to hear. I think I was muted for a little bit, but hopefully I'm back now and here to answer a bit more questions. I am trying to stop sharing the screen, so give me a sec here. Okay, all right. Another question from folks asking about the types of questions are usually asked in an interview. So as you probably heard just now, it's an unscripted conversation, which means that the interviewers go into the interview really not prepared with any questions in particular. But instead, we try to start the conversation with the student, and depending on the interest that they tell us about, or the topics that they want to highlight themselves, we then ask further questions to further dig out their interest, to ask in-depth questions about their certain experiences that they seem excited to talk about. So there's not a list of questions that the interviewers refer to when we're when we enter the interview. It really depends on what the students decides to share with us. And again, that goes back to really the point of this interview, which is, it's the student talking, right? We want to hear what they think is important for admissions officers to know. So that's a good question to think about as you're preparing for an interview, or as you go into an interview, is what are things that admissions officers should know about me, right? Maybe some of these things are already in the application, in other sections of the application that I want to highlight, or I want to add more depth, more details, more juice to. And what are some things that they don't know about me yet, right? The new information that I didn't really have a place in the application to put in, but I want them to know, right? So these are good questions to think about. And also the point of the interview, right, is to make you a person and to make you stand up, like Sean was saying during the Tuesday talk, not necessarily what they already know, right, to repeat your scores, your activities list, but to really add depth to you as a person. Okay, any more questions? Okay, seems like there are no more questions coming in. So that means that we talked about it and answered all the questions folks had. That's great. So we have this part of we have this Q&A as part of every Tuesday talk after the hour-long session, and we are taking a 2-week break. So if you have more questions, or you're wanting to learn more about initial view and don't have questions now, you can come back in 2 weeks as well. So enjoy your summers, everybody, and please take care, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.